come you never told me Stephanie K's your sister?
I guess I never got around to it. I guess.
Hey, there she is.
Hi, Steph.
Buzz off, Arthur.
You can't pretend I'm not your brother forever.
I told you it's nothing personal. I've got my image. I don't talk to grade 7s.
Grade 7s are people too, you know.
Debatable.
Hello, Degrassi fans, and welcome to the Degrassi Kid podcast, where each week we break down the history and impact of our favorite Canadian TV show. I'm Jocelyn, and today we're going through the complete history of Degrassi Junior High. Not only are we going to break down the standout moments like Spike's teenage pregnancy or Wheels dealing with the loss of his parents, we're also going to ask some key questions. What is it about this new era of Degrassi that will go on to redefine the franchise? What storylines in the show were inspired by the actual Degrassi cast? And we'll finally answer the question you've been waiting for. Why did the kids in Degrassi Street change their names when they graduated into Degrassi Junior High School? We're going to go through it all, and it's only going to happen here on a brand new season of the Degrassi Kid podcast. So first, I just want to say, if you were wondering why there was no episode last week, I went to a wedding in another province. It was beautiful. But when I got back, I tested positive for COVID. So I'm sorry there was no episode. There was no extra perks on Patreon. It was just me slowly fading away into my bed for an entire week. But that's okay, because now we can jump right back into talking about Degrassi. So where did we leave off? The kids at Degrassi Street just wrapped up their final episode in 1986. Overseas, the BBC is hungry to get their hands on even more Degrassi. In Canada, the film production industry is being pumped full with millions and millions of dollars in financing. And playing with time, it spent the last few years building up a reputable production company filled with young actors, film directors, and so much more. So why did Degrassi's co-creators Linda Schuyler and Kit Hood decide that now was the time to start all over again? Well, the kids in Degrassi Street were growing up, and it was time for their stories to grow up with them. Since they graduated elementary school in the finale, it made sense for them to move on to the next step, which is junior high school. But before we go any further, let's make some things clear. Degrassi Junior High will have the exact same actors as the kids at Degrassi Street, it'll be made by the exact same production company, and it will have the exact same name. However, it is not going to be connected to the original series in any way. All the actors will get brand new characters, and their primary filming location will no longer be the real Degrassi Street. The Kids at Degrassi Street is technically its own independent series, and not really a part of the same franchise. But why? We know why they moved on to Degrassi Junior High School, but why did they leave behind everything that came before it? It's time we finally answer the question you've been waiting for. Why did the kids at Degrassi Street change their names when they graduated into junior high school? Well, with the success of Degrassi Street, Linda and Kit were given an even bigger budget to work with. They'd now receive $180,000 per episode, where, in contrast, the kids at Degrassi Street was receiving about $20,000. As well, gone were the days of creating 4 or 5 episodes a year. Now, Degrassi was given the go-ahead to make 13 brand new episodes back-to-back. This meant for the first time they'd be able to sit down and plan out character arcs for an entire season worth of stories. They did do this with Degrassi Yearbook, but it was only for 6 episodes. This time, they had to take that same formula and double it. For Linda and Kit, this opportunity felt like a fresh start. Their little show was being taken seriously, and I mean, for the first 6 years, it was practically just an experiment anyway, a kind of mishmash of standalone short films that shared the same title and the same kids, but didn't really feel like a continuous series. So they decided to start a brand new franchise. This time, they'd take everything they learned on the kids of Degrassi Street and pull out all the good stuff, like age-appropriate casting, certain storytelling techniques, and a name that was recognized all around the world. And to be fair to the young actors who pioneered the original show, they'd get to stay on for this new reincarnation. So Linda and Kit asked them a question. Do you want to keep your old characters, or do you want to try brand new ones? Stacey Mistician said, I think most of us wanted to move on to something new. I was sick of playing a little goody-goody and I wanted to try something different. So Stacy let go of Lisa Kennard and became the brand new Caitlin Ryan. And all the other actors followed suit. They left their old, immature characters behind and became the new, grown-up characters. Lucy, Wheels, Alex, Scooter, Susie, Jason, Trish, and Nancy. All brand new students enrolled at Degrassi Junior High School. And I have to ask, what did Yan Moore think of this? He was Degrassi's film editor turned writer on the Kids of Degrassi Street. By now, he had gotten really comfortable and familiar with writing all of these characters who had their unique personality traits and unique storylines of their own. Now, he had to forget all of that and start all over again? How did that make him feel? Yan couldn't have been more excited. This new start meant he didn't have to worry that Pete's dad was in jail. It didn't matter that Lisa actually had 2 brothers, and Griff's dead parents could even come back to life just to have Wheels relive their tragic car crash all over again. But an interesting question has to be posed. If so much on Degrassi has changed, if it's a brand new series that isn't connected to the original, why keep the name Degrassi? Won't that just be confusing? Well, Linda and Kit admitted that it was primarily for the broadcasters. Having a name that was so recognizable meant it was easier to sell their show. As well, it would keep that old fan base coming back. But if fans tune in looking for the same old Degrassi, won't they be disappointed? Well, later in the podcast, we're going to break all of that down. But before we get there, I think it's time we meet the brand new Degrassi kids that would fill the halls of Degrassi Junior High School. And speaking of Degrassi kids, I'd like to introduce you to my real-life best friend, Stevi Gerrior, and my internet friend, Riley, who were the first to sign up for the Degrassi Kid mail-out option. They're going to receive a package in the mail personally put together by me, the Degrassi Kid. Riley actually signed up as a birthday present to themselves, which I think is so sweet, and Stevie would do absolutely anything to support me. I could say I want to go to the moon, and Stevie would be the one to personally make sure I got there. So thank you guys so much. And a huge thank you to Randy Carter for becoming a Degrassi Kid himself. That's the name of a brand new tier over on patreon.com/Degrassi Kid. Go check it out. But for now, let's learn about all the Degrassi kids who are enrolling at a brand new Degrassi Junior High. In search of young, inexperienced kids willing to step in front of a camera. Not something you could advertise today, but for the Playing with Time production company, it's how they relied on finding their authentic young actors for their teenage roles. Degrassi's publicist, Catherine Ellis, would post flyers all around Toronto. She took out ads in the newspaper, and she even approached schools, letting them know they were looking for 50 kids to make up the student body at Degrassi Junior High. One of the first auditions came from Amanda Steptoe. She came home with a flyer and asked her dad to take some headshots. And while he begrudgingly dug out the family camera, Amanda's mom criticized her for her spiky blonde hair. "You're never going to get on TV looking like that. Put your hair down," she said. And in true punk fashion, Amanda replied, "If they don't like it, fuck them." And of course, as we know, they loved it. But Amanda wasn't hired on as a lead actor right away. She originally auditioned for the role of Stephanie Kay, but she just wasn't what they were looking for. Still, they loved her unique sense of style and her realism, so they kept her on deck as a fellow classmate, someone to roam around the hallways and fill up space in the background. For her first few appearances, her character didn't even really have a name yet. That was until she met Neil Hope, who plays Wheels. Due to her signature hairstyle, Neil started calling her Spike, having no idea he'd just given her a nickname that would follow her around for life. It's not until 11 episodes later that Spike will upgrade into a main character. She gets her big break on the story It's Late, where Spike has sex and gets pregnant. Amanda said her first reaction was, "Holy crap, I'm the star of this?" Immediately followed by, "How am I going to tell my mom?" For Darren Brown, it was his younger sister who brought home a similar flyer from her junior high school. He tried out and landed the role of Dwayne, the tough guy. Rebecca Saw noticed an ad in the Toronto Sun and auditioned for the role of Melanie Brody. She didn't get the part, but still, she stood out to the casting director, so they created a best friend for Melanie and named her Kathleen. And Pat Mastriani overheard his principal make an announcement on the loudspeaker. He told the school about audition forms that were dropped off by a local production company. Pat noticed the no experience required and thought, well, that's right up my alley. Pat nailed his audition and got hired as the fedora-wearing goofball Joey Jeremiah. But Stefan Brogren was disappointed to hear this news. He thought he did really well in his audition, and he wanted the part of Joey. He also figured he's probably not getting hired on as Yick Yu. So Stefan gave up on his dreams of ever being on Degrassi Junior High. Until they asked Stefan a question. Do you know how to play any instruments? I'm learning the violin, he said. That helped, but if Stefan could learn how to play the guitar, they'd create a character just for him. And even better, because this character was brand new, he'd even get to pick his own nickname. Did he want to be Slim or did he want to be Snake? We all know the choice he made now, but just like Spike, a young Stefan Brogren had no idea this one decision would seal his fate, and he would spend the rest of his life being recognized as Snake from Degrassi. So Degrassi had their school, Degrassi had their cast, and now it was time to start filming Degrassi Junior High.
Wake up in the morning feeling shy and lonely. I gotta go to school.
What's going to happen when the old Degrassi fans tune in to this new series? They're going to see brand new characters in a brand new school who are far, far away from Degrassi Street. Linda and Kit understand this. They know some of their old audience will come back, and they know an entirely new audience will be tuning in for the very first time. Either way, it's their first premiere episode that will decide if either audiences will keep coming back at all. And even though Degrassi's gotten an entirely new makeover, it's their core values and storytelling that will connect these two worlds of Degrassi together. So, what do these core values look like? What decisions were Linda and Kit making on the kids of Degrassi Street that find their way into the premiere episode of Degrassi Junior High? First off, every episode will be entirely from the kids' perspective, multiple storylines will be happening in each episode, and they won't always wrap up in a nice feel-good ending. Instead, characters would now have season-long story arcs that were planned out from the very first episode, and what happens on Degrassi today will affect tomorrow. For example, Stephanie K starts off Season 1, Episode 1, being obsessed about her image. She changes her clothes, and she does anything she can to make sure the boys like her, even if it means leaving behind her friends and family. But in the finale, after a whole semester of ruining her relationships, fighting with her brother, and embarrassing herself on dates, Stephanie changes. She realizes she doesn't like who she's become, and she tries to go back to her old self. But because what happens today impacts tomorrow, this is impossible. All of these relationships have already been ruined. Her best friend Vula doesn't want to talk to her anymore. Joey gets his feelings hurt when Stephanie uses him to make Wheels jealous, and even in its finale, Degrassi still doesn't give us that feel-good ending. Sure, Stephanie's grown up and learned from her mistakes, but she still has to face the consequences. And because of that, we're now left wondering, well, what next? How will Stephanie handle the next semester at Degrassi when nobody likes her? Well, in Season 2, Stephanie starts to feel alone. She feels depressed, and Degrassi shows us what it's like to be a teenager who withdraws themselves and deals with thoughts of suicide. And all of that is set up in the very first premiere episode of Degrassi Junior High. And they do this with everyone. Every character goes through some kind of transformation that will make an impact in their next season at Degrassi. Now, of course, I'm not going to go through every single character and every single character arc, but I do want to go through the standout moments, just like this one, that redefined the Degrassi brand. The premiere episode, called Kiss Me Steph, solidifies that what happens today will affect tomorrow. All the stories will be taken seriously and told through the eyes of young teenagers, and those teenagers will be played by real, age-appropriate, and inexperienced kids from Toronto, like Spike. And not only that, this premiere episode cements the idea that multiple storylines will be happening at the same time. It's not just Stephanie who gets introduced in this episode. She fights with her best friend Vula, she strives for the attention of Joey Jeremiah and the entire 8th grade class of boys. Her younger brother Arthur is even going through an entirely different storyline on his own, where he meets his new best friend Yick Yu on the first day of school. This is a far cry from Ida Makes a Movie, where it's just Ida, Fred, and Cookie making a film together. Now, Stephanie K is being cheered on by an entire student body while she runs for class president.
We want a kiss! We want a kiss!
And because Degrassi is giving us these huge story arcs without feel-good endings, in the finale, we'll end up here.
Stephanie K's gotta go. She's a terrible school president.
Yeah, she's only school president because she let all the boys kiss her.
Yeah.
But she goes to student council meetings.
But that's not enough. She can't make Joey sports rep just because she likes him.
She was drunk at the big dance.
Remember all those promises she made when she was elected? What happened to the rock music on the PA?
What happened to her dances?
Yeah, that's right.
She hasn't kept a single promise she made.
Impeach Stephanie K.
Sign the petition. Sign the petition.
But what happens in between? There's 50 new kids at Degrassi, and not all of them have stories centered around Stephanie K. So let's break down 5 episodes in this first season of Degrassi that will make their mark on the history of the show.
Dad, I think I better go.
You want to start bringing home a paycheck is what you want to do. No! Get here! Get here! Straight in!
Home isn't always a safe space. Parents don't always have the perfect solutions. And sometimes they're the ones causing you the most problems that you don't know how to deal with. In only the 4th episode, Degrassi makes the decision to show the home life of Rick, a child being abused by his father. Kate Taylor, who was the liaison between the Canadian show and the American broadcaster, she said, "We're trying to show that not all teenagers have families like the Cosbys." While that quote ages poorly now, at the time, Bill Cosby was the quintessential TV dad. Sure, he had rules and high expectations, but at the end of the day, all of his kids had a mom and dad that they could rely on. On Degrassi, Rick has an abusive father. Kathleen has an alcoholic mother. Vula's dad was overprotective and overbearing. Lucy's parents were entirely absent. And all of this was done on purpose. Degrassi made sure to explore all sides of parent and child relationships. Degrassi wasn't only going to show a picture-perfect family. And that's important, because that's real life. And it doesn't stop there. In season 2, Lucy starts to get unwanted attention from a male teacher who tries to take advantage of her. With these difficult stories, we also started to see the advisory warnings being placed before the episodes, warning young audiences that they were about to witness some mature scenes of violence, explicit content, and even some discussions of a sexual nature. But of course, the minute you tell teenagers not to watch something, they want to watch it even more. And this warning label actually increased the viewership for the new series. Just like we saw in 2003 with Manny's abortion episode. Because it was banned in America, kids were doing anything they could to find it online so they could see what it was all about. Even creating petitions that there's no difference between Canadian teenagers and American teenagers, so why not just show it to us? But it's not just the abortion episodes that were causing controversy. Already in just the 6th episode of Degrassi Junior High, Degrassi has their first banned episode. Even though the BBC was eager to buy up any amount of Degrassi they could, they let this one episode sit on the shelf just a little longer. The episode was called Rumor Has It, and it was about their teacher, Miss Avery. She doesn't have a husband, and she's always seen with a woman, so a rumor gets started that she must be a lesbian. Caitlin has some confusing dreams and starts acting weird anytime someone brings it up. So of course, the other students start a rumor that Caitlin must be a lesbian too. Now, we never really got a confirmation either way. It basically ends with Caitlin accepting that if Miss Avery, hypothetically, in some other dimension, could ever possibly be gay, it would probably maybe be totally fine, which I think is probably more of a reflection of what they were allowed to do on TV and not necessarily what Degrassi wanted to do on TV. I don't really know. Either way, things keep trucking along. In the next episode, Joey and Wheels head downtown to Shoppers Drug Mart to buy condoms when they think Stephanie K wants to have sex. And in episode 11, Spike goes into a bedroom with Shane McKay, only to come out with a big decision to make.
Mom, I'm pregnant.
How do you talk to kids about unprotected sex? What would a teenager do if they suddenly became pregnant? And what common misconceptions do young girls believe in before they have sex for the very first time? Degrassi decided to hire a researcher to scope out 50 teen moms and ask them, what was this experience like for you? Loretta Castellarin took on this huge role, and on top of interviewing teenagers, she also consulted doctors, reached out to professionals, and looked at statistics about teenage pregnancy. She wanted to know, how did they tell their parents? Where did abortion or adoption fall into their decision? And of course, how did their sexual partner react to the big news? Because as easy as it was to find teen mothers, it was practically impossible to find teen fathers. When Loretta finished, she took her research back to the Degrassi team. They decided to pull out the most common pieces from her interviews, and from there, our story was created. It was very likely that this young character would be pressured into unprotected sex, believe in common misunderstandings like you can't get pregnant your first time, and she'd battle with both abortion and adoption before ultimately deciding to keep her baby. From there, she'd struggle with all the stigmas that come with being pregnant in high school, like being talked about, being kicked out, and struggling to keep up with assignments. Now that they had their story, they needed the character. Linda Schuyler said, "We decided to take a nice, quiet character that everybody liked because we wanted to show it could be anyone. It can be your first time and just happen." So they decided on the background character who only had a few lines here and there, but it was always memorable from the moment you saw her. They chose Spike. It's always so interesting for me to learn about the history of Degrassi because these decisions seem so fundamental to the show now, and it's hard to imagine what it would be like if they never happened at all. No one had any idea that this research in 1986 would go on to influence Erica's abortion in 1989, the reboot of Emma's Generation in 2001, Manny's abortion in 2003, and even later, Snake becoming Emma's stepdad and the principal at her school. And if Kit Hood and Linda Schuyler didn't first experiment on the kids of Degrassi Street, would we be going into Spike's pregnancy with such strong storytelling values? Would this story be taken seriously, or would it be preachy and about abstinence? Would it be from the teen perspective, or would adults be having private conversations about how Spike's a slut? And of course, would this problem actually affect the next episode, or would it have wrapped up neatly as just a pregnancy scare, with the life lesson being never have sex at all? Most teen TV shows that do cover pregnancy tend to have it wrap up in some kind of accident, like, oh no, she was pregnant and now she's in a car crash? Oh my god, she had a miscarriage? What a tragedy. But thank God, right? I mean, the producers don't actually want a baby on set, and they don't want their attractive actors looking big and fat. Are you crazy? But honestly, the most impactful part of Spike's pregnancy doesn't even happen in the show. Behind the scenes, Amanda started to get some clarity on what it was like for her own biological mother when she was in the exact same position, when she had to decide to put Amanda up for adoption. Amanda said, "Playing Spike made me realize I shouldn't hate my own mother for what she did, especially when I realized I really was playing her." Wow, we could dive so much deeper into this episode. I mean, we're in season 1 and we're already having our first direct discussion about abortion. Spike considers the choice wholeheartedly and stands up for it, something she continues to do with Erica and Manny's pregnancy when they both consider abortion. So let's take a moment and listen in on a discussion about abortion between two teenagers who just found out they're going to have a baby.
What if I didn't have the baby?
Get an abortion? Can't kill a baby.
It's not a baby, it's only a fetus.
It's alive, it's got rights.
But what about my rights? I don't want to be a mother.
I don't want to be a father, but an abortion.
I don't want to have an abortion, but I don't want to have a baby. I don't want any of this. I'm just a kid. Why is this happening? It was just a little mistake.
Sort of a big mistake.
Wow, this one episode really cements the idea that if kids are talking about it on the schoolyard, they'll talk about it on Degrassi. Linda Schuyler said, "It's not our job to tell kids what's right or what's wrong. What we're trying to do is present these really tough situations so they'll be better informed when they have to make decisions on their own." And that's exactly what happens. In the end, Spike doesn't choose to have an abortion. But Degrassi does really well at providing education around the topic without ever making you feel like you're in a classroom. It still just feels like a natural conversation between two teenagers. For most young viewers, Degrassi might be the first time someone is talking to them frankly about sex. In school, sex ed is all about anatomy. The most you'll ever learn is, when two mature adults consent to intercourse, a fertilized egg will attach itself to a uterine What does that even mean? Are you joking? Most parents and teachers are just telling kids, don't do it. Degrassi's telling you it's your own personal choice and you have to be informed. Loretta said, "A lot of what does exist in education just concentrates on the functions of the body. But kids want to know more about relationships and feelings, like when he's kissing me and I start to feel a certain way, where do I draw the line?" Amanda said in real life, the only sex education she ever got was looking at diagrams and filling in the blanks. She said, when you reach a certain age, you become very curious about sex. Nobody tells you you can't get pregnant this way or you can't get pregnant that way. They just say, don't do it. Of course, at any age, every time your parents tell you not to do something, you do it. But ultimately, Spike ends this episode still unsure of what she's going to do. Even well into the next season, she hasn't decided if adoption is the right choice or not. Degrassi really shows you that this isn't something you can figure out in between your English classes at school. And after 13 episodes, Degrassi Junior High wraps up in the finale called Revolution, where Stephanie K loses her confidence, Spike worries about her pregnancy, and the kids eagerly await a new semester at Degrassi. Degrassi's back on CBC and opening with Egbert. It follows Spike and Shane as they try to navigate their dynamic as soon-to-be parents, while they take care of a fake baby egg. Spike's pregnancy storyline is just beginning. Soon after, we reach the episode Bottled Up, which is huge in the story of Degrassi's history, but you might not know it. Behind the scenes, Linda Schuyler was always taking advantage of the most valuable resource you could have for a teen TV show. She had actual teenagers. So she asked them, how does alcohol play a factor in your life? Several of the kids spoke up, and Linda was expecting lots of stories about underage drinking and maybe parties that got out of hand. But instead, she was met with these young kids opening up about how alcohol affects them because of the adults in their lives who abuse it. From this conversation, it was decided that the overachieving Kathleen would wake up to find her mom passed out on the couch again. But not all of Degrassi's episodes are always dark and heavy when they're inspired by real life. In the episode titled Trust Me, Joey is over at Snake's house for a sleepover, and he takes their family car out for a joyride. This episode was inspired after the real-life actor Pat Mastroianni took the company van out for a little stroll. Mostly, he turned on the engine, moved forward a few feet, and production manager Sari Friedland came out and yelled at him. Other times, it was even smaller. Neil Hope started to get headaches and needed glasses, so Wheels started to get headaches and needed glasses. But after that, Degrassi wraps up their Season 2 finale with an episode titled Past Tense, where the Degrassi kids and the Degrassi audience find out that due to population changes, Degrassi will now include a grade 9, meaning we're not losing any of the Degrassi kids next season. But before we learn about how Degrassi's history changes forever, I want to say a big thank you to Glenn, Shelby, and Kat for signing up as Ultimate Degrassi fans on Patreon. They're going to receive a shout out in every episode and be able to participate when we have our first guest this season. And I am so excited to hear what you have to say. So thank you for making my Degrassi dreams come true, and let's get right back to the standout moments in Season 3 of Degrassi Junior High. Stephanie K runs for student council president. Shane and Spike practice taking care of a fake baby egg. And Will's parents are killed by a drunk driver. Season 3 of Degrassi Junior High sets the precedent that the first episode is going to take everything we know and flip it on its head. For example, let's look at the opening episodes going forward. Season 1 of Degrassi High opens with Erica's abortion. Season 2 opens with Dwayne having unprotected sex and contracting HIV. The reboot of The Next Generation opens with an online predator. Then Craig is abused by his dad, and so on and so on. This is the moment where Degrassi really embraces that the audience will be tuning in, but it's the first episode that will make them decide if they want to stay. Can't Live With Them is also the first time Degrassi's going to give us an hour-long, 2-part episode to open up this brand new season. This trend will continue right up until season 13 of The Next Generation. And trust me, when we get to the history of Degrassi Next Class, I will give you my unfiltered opinion on why I think Degrassi stopped making premiere 2-parter episodes. But that's like literally decades from now, so we will just have to wait to hear that opinion. For now, the next standout episode is He Ain't Heavy. It's Degrassi's second attempt at having a gay storyline, and if you listen to my podcast, The Queer History of Degrassi, you already know my true feelings on it. And you'll know that Degrassi actually started to ramp up their merchandising. Now, not only could you watch this story unfold in the episode, you could also buy the Degrassi book titled Snake, where Snake reacts to his brother coming out of the closet and questions his own sexuality along the way. Then, Michelle and BLT navigate an interracial relationship with backlash from Michelle's racist parents in the episode titled Black and White. In real life, Degrassi starts to receive angry letters from religious groups, calling them sinners and advocating for their show to be taken off the air. This is something Degrassi will face until the end of time. But as always, Degrassi embraces the criticism and pushes it even further. Next season, Michelle and BLT will have several kissing scenes that normalize physical touch and intimacy in interracial relationships. Today, you probably wouldn't even realize that these moments could even be seen as controversial, the same way you probably don't even realize that the Christian character Becky Baker only came to Degrassi after a Christian fundamentalist group boycotted the show for their trans character Adam. The one that Becky falls in love with. Dun dun dun! That goes to show you how long Degrassi's been throwing big ol' FUs to religious hate groups, because Linda went from getting letters like written on a typewriter about interracial relationships to getting blasted with emails about a trans character, and she's just like, whatever. But probably one of my favorite things about this specific episode is that we got to get a behind-the-scenes glimpse on how Degrassi allows their young actors to advocate for the stories that they're telling, when Linda Schuyler sits down to read through the script.
Do you believe that racism still exists today? Are we dealing with an issue, or are we dealing with a non-issue? Who wants to pick that one up?
In 1989, CBC did a behind-the-scenes special called Degrassi Between Takes. In this feature, we get to watch how Degrassi takes advantage of having access to their most valuable resource, real teenagers. How do teenagers talk to each other about sex? What's actually important to them in junior high school? And what are the sneaky ways they hide things from their parents? All of those questions could be answered on the set of Degrassi just by watching these real kids interact with each other. But Degrassi took it a step further. They didn't just observe the young cast, they encouraged them to advocate for their characters and really dive into the material. Stefan Brogren said sometimes it'd just be simple changes in dialogue. For example, we'd never say, "Oh, he's such a square," so if it's in the script, we'd get a change. And other times, it's like this script meeting, where they talk about interracial relationships from a teenage perspective. Let's go back to Linda's question and hear what kind of advice the Degrassi cast gives to Yan Moore, Linda Schuyler, and Kit Hood as they read through this episode. And we'll hear Linda talk about why this meeting is so important to Degrassi's storytelling.
At the end, what she's doing right now, it's not really rebelling, in my opinion, because she doesn't stand up to her parents. She's just going to hide it. Yeah. And it's not hard to do that.
Maybe BLT
Maybe that would be the better thing to do.
No, but if she was...
Or she could end up standing up to him that way without me having to say anything.
Yeah, but she's still under...
No, and she goes, no, and then BLT's sort of like, okay, that I don't care.
When we're at those read-throughs, Yan plays an incredibly crucial role. He's listening, he's writing, he hears how they say it in their own vernacular. It's just a wonderful example of the adult, the professional talents of an adult merging with the raw, open emotions of the adolescent.
I just love listening to Linda's old interviews. That clip was from 33 years ago, and even if you interviewed her today about Degrassi, she would have the exact same things to say. And it blows me away that someone can be so rooted in their own core values of storytelling, regardless of how much money your show is making along the way. I respect her so much for it. But across all of these episodes, one thing I want to point out is that Degrassi really cements themselves into the adult rule. That means no two adults can be seen having a private conversation together on screen. Two parents can be fighting, but the kid has to be around to overhear it. Michelle's parents can privately discuss that they won't allow their white daughter to date a black boy, but the show can only represent the moment when Michelle finds out about it. This makes sure that everything is from the teen perspective and adults aren't preaching their values to the audience. Linda said, "You'll see teachers, you'll meet the school secretary, but it's important when the kids have problems, they deal with it themselves." For me, it's also part of the charm in the fact that we never see the school principal. When you're a kid, your teachers, your principal, these are not real people. I remember when I was in the 4th grade and I saw my teacher at the grocery store, I was really confused. What is he doing here in this public space buying himself groceries? This makes literally no sense. But Degrassi wraps up their controversial storytelling and ends the series with Bye Bye Junior High. This time, Degrassi gives us our first lesson that if there is a school dance, a graduation, or just a big important night for the characters, tragedy is going to strike. On the very night that this dance is happening, in a gymnasium filled with kids, the boiler room blows up and Degrassi Junior High burns to the ground. But why? Burning down Degrassi Junior High means there's no room for them to come back. Usually in a finale, things are left kind of open-ended, so there's room to come back for another season. So why did Linda and Kit want to make sure Degrassi Junior High School was never seen again? And was the next step in the franchise always going to be Degrassi High? Before we do our final breakdown, I just want to say thank you to my ultimate Degrassi fans. Each episode, they get a special shout out for all the support they give me over on patreon.com/DegrassiKid. Because of fans like you, I get to do what makes me happy. So thank you goes out to Adrian, Annie C, and Annie M, Ashley, Brittany, Chrissy, Evie, Kimberly, Lucy, Max, Najama, Owen, Rachel, Rebecca, Sarah J, Sierra, Steven, Teal, and Wilson. You guys are the ultimate Degrassi fans. Thank you. Now, unfortunately, you'll just have to wait until next week to find out why they burned down Degrassi Junior High School, and I'll even tell you how Degrassi High almost never got made at all. But for now, let's do our final breakdown and make sure we've answered our opening questions. Why did the kids in Degrassi Street change their names when they went into junior high school? What is it about this new era of Degrassi that went on to redefine the franchise? And how did the real Degrassi kids make their own special mark on the show? First off, the kids at Degrassi Street changed their names so they could start fresh, let go of all their lost siblings and dead parents, and brave the brand new world of Degrassi Junior High. Second, Degrassi cemented core values in their storytelling that would continue to build off the foundation they already established on the kids at Degrassi Street. Now, not only are the stories taken seriously and from the kids' perspective, but also adults aren't always a safe space. Degrassi establishes this with Rick's abusive father, or when Lucy starts getting unwanted attention from a male teacher. It's unrealistic to teach kids that every single adult is going to be somebody you can trust. Degrassi will be unafraid in tackling hard topics, like with Miss Avery, who maybe could possibly be a lesbian, or with Michelle and BLT, who are in an interracial relationship. Because if kids are talking about it on the schoolyard, they can talk about it on Degrassi. Degrassi isn't here to tell you what's right or what's wrong, like with Spike's decision to have sex. They just want to make sure you're informed before you make choices on your own. With this, Degrassi will start working with counselors and professionals to represent authentic teen experiences when it comes to hard-hitting topics, like Spike's pregnancy. Degrassi will find real people and ask them, what was this experience like for you? And finally, Degrassi will cement the idea of character arcs that don't always have a feel-good happy ending, like Stephanie K's depression storyline. And 2-part premiere episodes will take everything we expect to happen and turn it on its head, like when Wheels loses his parents to a drunk driving accident. But overall, Degrassi's history is cemented by the very first decision that was ever made. Degrassi set out to make sure kids could see themselves represented in media. And because of that, kids who were bullied at school, abused by their parents, struggling in relationships, whatever it was, Degrassi took on the responsibility of telling a story that was meant for you, someone you know, or someone who needed help. And finally, Degrassi took advantage of the most valuable resource they had for a teen TV show. They had actual teenagers. Without the real Degrassi kids, episodes like Bottled Up, about Kathleen's alcoholic mother, or Black and White, about a teenage interracial relationship, would have never gone on to become standout episodes in quite the same way. The honesty and vulnerability in their feedback allowed for Degrassi to uniquely capture the authentic teen experience in each of these episodes. And that's why they're remembered as the standout moments in Degrassi's history. And if you want to find out why Degrassi Junior High was almost the finale to the entire franchise, well, you'll just have to wait until next week. But for now, let's listen in on our favorite high school band play us out as they perform one of their most memorable songs. Thanks, guys.
Everybody wants something, they'll never give up. Everybody wants something, they'll take your money and never give up. Everybody wakes up to the facts as they are. Dedication is hard, but you'll be somebody, and you will go far.